Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Kayleigh McEnany here with my co-host Emily Campagno. Also joining us, Fox News correspondent Molly Line, the host of Kennedy Saves the World podcast, Kennedy, and Fox News contributor Guy Benson. Well, we begin this Monday with new reporting and damaging polls regarding President Biden's age and ability to lead. 80-year-old Biden still hasn't held a single campaign event since launching his re-election bid. And now the New York Times, they are reporting that Biden's staff intentionally tries to keep his schedule light. That report reads in part, quote, "In private, some officials acknowledge that they may want to consider reasonable accommodations," interesting wording, "not to physically tax an aging president. His staff schedules most of his public appearances between noon and 4 p.m. and leaves him alone on weekends as much as possible." Interesting. And that same Times report goes on to highlight President Biden's well-documented Air Force fall. You all saw it last week. That report reads, "Anyone can trip at any age, but for an 80-year-old president, it inevitably raises unwelcome questions. If it were anyone else, the signs of age might not be notable, but Biden is the chief executive of the world's most powerful nation and has just embarked on a campaign asking voters to keep him in the White House until age 86, drawing more attention to an issue that polls show trouble most Americans and is the source of enormous anxiety among party leaders." Emily, so reasonable accommodations are only hosting events between 12 and 4. And the quote goes on to cite the White House chief of staff, who said, "This is nothing beyond what is done for any president." I can tell you, I worked for a president. Donald Trump sometimes did 5 rallies in a day, sometimes past midnight. So most presidents do events before noon and after 4.
Right. Most presidents have the competency and stamina to do so, Kayleigh. And Jim Garrity went on, I thought, to write a really smart analysis on this. And the takeaways were twofold. Number one, it was essentially the sharpest the should be sharpest, but the strongest communication tool by this administration is the president himself. So it is such a detriment to the American people and such an indicator when they are only using him for 20 hours a week. And he went on to say, when afterward, after the administration clearly came out saying, well, essentially what they're saying is when the staff appearances are between noon and 4, he says, well, what they're saying is that the president is currently a safe bet to have about those 20 good hours a week. He says anything beyond that is an open question. Maybe he'll be sharp, maybe he won't. Maybe an overseas trip will try him out for 3 days, as in the case of his Ireland trip. He can barely maintain the appearance of handling his duties now. God only knows how he'll handle the rigors of a presidential re-election campaign or any additional crises between now and January 20th, 2025. And also what he didn't say, but what I emphasize, is a successive presidency. Yeah. He is clearly not able to withstand the rigors of the commander-in-chief position now, let alone a campaign, let alone a next presidency. And I don't know why we're the only ones that seem to be able to see it.
Yeah, the New York Times at least acknowledging on some level, interestingly, what the American public sees is that President Biden might not be able to handle the job. But interestingly, something really important happened at 7 p.m. Eastern on Friday night. I had just gotten back from dinner. Most Americans were out enjoying their summer. And then in the Oval Office, this is what was happening. Take a listen.
I know bipartisanship is hard and unity is hard, but we can never stop trying. Because in moments like this one, the ones we just faced, where the American economy and the world economy is at risk of collapsing, there's no other way. As I've said in my inaugural address, without unity, there is no peace, only bitterness and fury. And we can never become that country.
And we know that's not the real Joe Biden. We will roll the tape. This is your president, and at his best, if you will. Watch.
My message to unvaccinated Americans is this: what more is there to wait for? What more do you need to see? We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin.
Do you want to be on the side of Dr. King or George Wallace? Do you want to be on the side of John Lewis or Bull Connor? Do you want to be on the side of Abraham Lincoln or Jefferson Davis? This is the moment to decide, to defend our elections, to defend our democracy.
Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
Now, that is our president, as we've seen him over years. But 7 p.m. Friday night, I believe he test ran a 2024 strategy, which is take the Oval Office, get it broadcast on ABC, CBS, NBC, that's what he got, wide coverage, and just say unity and act like all of that never happened. I think it was a test run. What do you think, Guy?
I think we're seeing the campaign right now. He's not technically holding any events, but I think that's basically their plan.
Yep.
Right? And we were playing the sound bites. They're hoping that we forget about Bull Connor and all of that, as he's just, again, the kindly grandfather saying, can't we unify? I'm the guy to do it, especially if he's against Trump. They want that rematch. They can't have him explicitly campaign from the basement because they don't have a pandemic as an excuse anymore. But I think that they are figuring out ways to try to rerun that campaign, but in 2024 as best they can, because he's not really up for a rigorous campaign. He's not. I mean, the fact that his own staff, you were just, reading the quote from the New York Times, and this was reported by Axios a few weeks ago, that they're limiting him to less than banker's hours as the president of the United States. I think, look, if I'm in that type of shape when I'm 80, great. But I think Americans want a president who is engaged, if necessary, 24/7 in a crisis. And I'm not sure there's confidence that he can do that because his staff doesn't trust him to work on a regular basis, really more than 20 hours a week or so, and hands off on the weekends. That sounds lovely. How many of us do no work on weekends? We're not president.
Right.
That is concerning.
Right, and Jen Psaki, Kennedy, admitted this is the new strategy, and she talks about when they decided this. Take a listen. This is the strategy, what Guy said.
There was a decision made in the fall of 2021 when I was still in the White House working with that team that the strategy was to be quiet, that sharing every detail of a deal-making process, that making it into a big circus was not just a big mistake, but made it far less likely to happen. Because guess what? The biggest deals and the most important conversations often happen off camera. That's a part of the Biden philosophy.
Certainly not the American way, is it? I mean, there's a reason that the freedom of the press is codified in the First Amendment. So we have reporters and journalists who can figure out what's happening in those private conversations and report on them, not necessarily carry water and deliver propaganda for an administration that is clearly hobbled. You read this piece and you have to wonder what they're doing. Like, is this a selling point? Do you think this is the kind of honesty we want? No, we want transparency. We don't want something glossed over where, it's like when you go and visit your grandmother in the retirement community and your mom goes, you know what, let's only see grandma between noon and 4 because she has a harder time in the early evenings. And, let's give her some rest. Grandma doesn't have her finger on the nuclear football. All right. Grandma isn't making decisions that affect the course of history and affect the world and the outcome of American prosperity. We deserve more. We should be questioning everything, and we should be shown everything all the time.
We do, and the media is going to cover for Biden and his age. Look at the way, it's interesting, Molly, they contrasted Trump and Biden when they talked about age. This is the New York Times piece. The two Joe Bidens coexist in the same octogenarian president, sharp and wise at critical moments, the products of decades of seasoning, able to rise to the occasion even in the dead of night to confront a dangerous world, yet a little slower, a little softer, a little harder of hearing, a little more tentative in his walk, and the piece goes on. Interesting way to talk about him. Trump, here's what you get from the New York Times. While in office, Mr. Trump generated concerns about his mental acuity and physical condition. He did not exercise. His diet leaned heavily on cheeseburgers and steak. Most striking was Trump's cognitive performance. He was erratic and tended to rumble. Experts found that he had grown less attentive. His vocabulary shrunk. And aides say privately Trump had difficulty processing information. I was an aide. He had no difficulty processing information brought to him. But interesting the way they talk about both.
Yeah, and here we are on the cusp of a campaign trail if Biden goes out on the campaign trail. And we can look back at history. Some of the big moments in presidential fights have been the debate moments. And right now, as you pointed out, he is there. He can speak from the Oval Office. He can give these big speeches. So he doesn't necessarily have to go out on the campaign trail like a traditional candidate. But in 1984, one of the biggest moments in presidential debate history was when Ronald Reagan was asked the age question. And that may be something we see happening when President Biden gets out there on the campaign trail eventually or has a debate. And he answered it, with that classic line that he wouldn't be taking advantage of his not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience. And of course, he won that election handily. Bob Dole out on the campaign trail in his, I think he was in his 73 when he was facing off against a younger Bill Clinton. He had a small fall on the stage. It didn't bode well, and people will ask those age questions when something like that occurs.
And they should, because the American public, Democrat, Republican, Independent, they are all asking the same question.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kayleigh McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.